I wanted to talk about the resistances to contacting love. And I'll just go through the resistances. The first resistance is hatred. Hatred is an emotion when we feel powerless in a certain dynamic or situation. When we don't like feeling powerless, and powerlessness equates to weakness, and it means we're vulnerable. We don't want to feel that either. So the way hatred shows up is, you can tell if you are feeling hate for someone in that you want them to be eliminated. You want them to be killed. You want them to be shot into space. You want them to disappear completely forever. And hatred can show up in two ways. There's the hot hatred, destroying something, tearing it apart, breaking it, throwing it, this kind of business. And then there's the cool hatred, which is not hot. It doesn't have the emotion. It's like, I equate it to the snipers, that the military has. They're very cool. They're shooting often from a great distance. In many ways, they're not that connected with their target other than hitting it. They don't feel the humanity. So it's a coldness. We bring a coldness in, a distance in. And that's another form or expression of hatred. And I've said before and written that in my young life, I was not in touch with anger. That was something that I perceived to not be welcome in my family. But hatred was the way that I managed my upset. Is I could be like the assassin, silently hating the parent or whomever. And in that way, when I felt powerless, it gave me a sense of power. I controlled life and death in my imagination. And so it's one of the ways as children that we manage the power dynamic with parents and other family members. Another resistance to love is anger. Anger typically arises when we feel weakness. So remember, with hatred, it's feeling powerlessness. And with anger, it's that weakness. One of the ways we can experience this, for those of you that drive, if you're driving and somebody cuts in the lane you're in, and they do it quickly, they do it in a way that you feel is dangerous. If you're tracking, your initial reaction is going to be fear. They're coming close, they almost cause an accident, I could get hurt or die. So there's that initial hit of, this horrible thing could be happening. And then when it doesn't, then we feel that sense of weakness, and we turn to anger to feel a kind of a psychological strength, an emotional strength. And because we don't want to feel the weakness of fear. So this is a pattern that humans do. And we can be very identified with our anger. I've got some family members that tend to get angry very easily. They trigger shockingly fast. And for them, it's a perspective of the world. It's my world, and I decide right and wrong. And if something's wrong, I'm going to lash out. If I don't like what it is, I'm going to lash out. So that's one of the patterns too. And you can see, because we're lashing out, we're very identified. We're the ones who are judging the world. There isn't room for love. There isn't room for tenderness, for openness to receive. That person is closed. There are people that have as part of their psychological structuring a self-hatred. And this can be that people have taken on the perspective of others in their life, particularly young life, if they weren't liked, if they felt they were rejected. Sometimes it can be anticipatory. I don't think you're going to like me, so if I hate me first, then when I feel your disappointment or disapproval, it's not going to sting very much. I've already taken care of that. So you can see it's a self-defense. We're protecting ourselves by being worse to ourselves than we think the other is going to be. This again is going to block love. We're not going to be able to be open and receiving in a wholesome way. Also, when we get into self-judgments, we're judging ourselves, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good-looking enough, whatever the lack is, we can really feel that judgment about it. And this is something also that will block us from love because we're not open, we're not balanced, we're not relaxed, which normally are hallmarks of when we're in contact with love. And then finally, guilt. Guilt is another emotional reaction that will keep us from opening to love. Because guilt is a kind of remorse, a judgmental remorse, that I've done things wrong, I do things wrong, I'm not capable of doing things well or right. And so it automatically puts us in a kind of a deficit where, again, we're not going to be open, we're not going to be able to receive this love if we're strongly identified with guilt, with mistakes we've made. I mean, I've had people on retreat who spend the whole retreat and every retreat going through remorse. I should have taken this job, I should have gone to that school, I should have married that person, I should have not married that person, whatever. If they fixate on something that if they feel like they had made the alternate choice, life would have been so much better for them. Of course, they don't really know. It might not have been. But they hold on to it in that way, and they just replay this again and again. And some of these people, I'll ask them, what's your life like now? And their life could be very, very full, very rich, very happy. But they think it could have been even better if I had done this, taken this missed opportunity. So all of these will block our contact with love. And I mentioned them because then it takes them out of being unconscious into being conscious. So when they arise, when we see them, we recognize it for what it is. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to do a little exercise. The next book I have coming out end of this year, early next year, I'm calling Liberating the Self, Transforming Dysfunction into Authenticity. So it's working with qualities like hatred and anger, and it's tracing them back to the initial sense. Like with anger, I mentioned that we feel a certain weakness, and we want to feel strong rather than weak. And so we turn to anger to give the appearance of strength. But what we want to do is we want to feel initially the anger, then we want to trace that back and feel the weakness and the fear that are underneath that. And by feeling that, the weakness and the fear, by letting ourselves land there, that becomes the portal to open to potentially feeling authentic strength of the Absolute. And as we do these practices, as we engage this, then this becomes a portal that's open more readily. So when we have that reaction of somebody cutting in front of us, rather than falling into fear, which leads to the weakness, which leads to the anger, we may feel the fear. We may feel some sense of weakness, but it can open to authentic strength. We don't have to lash out at the other to prove we have strength. We can feel self-contained and confident within our own experience. So let's just do a little exercise here, a little kind of meditative exercise. I tried this with another group and it seemed to work pretty well, so we'll try it out here. So just start again with some deep belly breaths, letting yourself relax as fully as possible into this moment. Letting any thoughts or concepts that are pulling you away from this moment, just letting go of those, not having a tight hold on them. Feel your contact with the floor and the support of the building you're in. Feel the holding of the Sangha here. We're all practicing together. We're part of the undivided whole. We're all beautiful expressions of the Absolute. So I want you to recall a time when you had an event happen that resulted in anger. I use the driving example. That's one that seems to be familiar to most people. So just imagine you're someplace in line, whether you're driving or standing in line, and everything's going fine. And then somebody deliberately, in your observation, cuts in front of you. And they do it in a way, if it's driving, that's slightly dangerous. You feel it could have, if the timing had been off ever so slightly, there could have been a really horrific accident. And if you're standing in line in the store, this is somebody who's cutting in front of you, who's going to make you wait longer. So let your awareness touch into the solar plexus, which is above the hara and below the heart. And just sense into the solar plexus, feeling, you might feel a kind of dis-ease there, or an energy churning, kind of an uncertainty. I'm not sure what's happening. I don't know how to react. I feel slightly lost. Any of those can be here, or something different. But let yourself feel the weakness of that. Somebody's cut in front of you. They broke the rules. They might have put you and others in danger. They're definitely not considering you or respecting you. And just feel in the solar plexus that churn. The energy being unsettled. Maybe you don't feel like you can clearly see what to do. You don't know what action to take, if any. And just let yourself feel that fully as you can in this moment. You may feel a sense of ice water in your arms and legs, like it would be hard to lift an arm or a leg to take action. You may feel slightly confused, even stupefied. I don't know what's happening. I'm confused. Just stay with that uncertainty, the confusion, perhaps even the quality of being lost in yourself. And just stay with the solar plexus and the churn. The energy that may feel like anxiety, dread, and fear. I feel lost. Just keep breathing into the solar plexus, feeling what you're feeling. Not needing for it to go away or change. Not needing it to stay the same. Let your awareness just open a little more in the solar plexus to feel the edges of this churning of energy, this fear, this weakness. Feel the edges of that churning. And notice a kind of smoothness around the edges. A kind of calmness, a settledness. Somehow we feel like we've taken our seat. I feel more stable somehow. Might be your experience. You might be sensing clarity. Even peace could be here for you. Notice if you feel a kind of a movement of energy, like a current moving in a particular direction. As you sense into that current, notice its quality of strength, the here-ness, the directness, the unclutteredness of it. If you're feeling some of that anxiousness from the solar plexus and the stability and calmness, just let both be here together. You don't need to do anything more, but just hold both in awareness. Feeling that anxiousness and the seated settledness together. That calm strength of the Absolute may feel like it's holding the fear, the weakness, the anxiety. It's the container holding the reaction. Notice how the fear, anxiety, the weakness changes when you sense and feel the holding of absolute strength. It feels more contained. It may not feel overwhelming to you. It might even feel manageable. I can work with this. Let's just sit silently for a few minutes, being aware of the strength that's here, being aware of any weakness that's here, without needing to change anything. Just be present. Be open. Be curious. We'll sit silently for a little bit and then I'll ring the bell.